them as massive rivals as such, but we do see them as an easy 6 points. I mean, how is it for you playing? Obviously, we've got the West Ham there at the beginning. We can go back to that, but I mean, how is it playing against rivals? Obviously, when you're football players, but I mean, how do you approach that? I mean, do you have a different ethic that you need to win it?
I think they're the games we look forward to, like straight away. As soon as the season comes out, you look for your biggest fixtures, and obviously your local derbies, your Charlton, your West Hams for Millwall are massive games for players. As you said there, maybe Charlton not so big for the fans, but for players, I think it's the South London derby, and it means so much, you know, to have that one over your rivals. You know, it is what it is. It's the fixtures you look out for straight away as a Millwall player. Charlton, when we got West Ham, when we got Charlton, you know, they're the big games you look for. And as you said, like the result there away at Charlton, probably I was injured at the time I was in there, but what a day that was, you know.
Didn't do us justice that day, I think, wasn't it? Abdou got sent off, didn't he, early on after we went 2 up, and probably the better team up to that point, weren't we?
Yeah, we went 2-0 up, didn't we? I think went 2-0 up, started on fire, didn't we? And then Jimmy got sent off, and he got rescinded that one as well, didn't it? So he got sent off. So yeah. But what was good that obviously that year Charlton were up there with us, weren't they, as well? And obviously Swindon just got in the way of maybe Charlton Millwall at Wembley as well in the playoff final, didn't they? I remember thinking that at the time, but they were great games. I mean, we hadn't played Charlton for quite a few years. They'd obviously been in the Premier League, hadn't they? And then I think that was the first real opportunity we had for them coming down and playing in our division. We haven't played them for a long time, so I just love the way the fans pack out that whole stand behind the goal. There is a different feel to that week, to that game, absolutely, and the lads do feel that. I think you feel that as a group, and you feel that individually, and there is a definite buzz when you've got a derby coming up at the end of the week.
Do you need to remind players, like, for example, if you've got players that are not from Millwall, not from the area, do you need to tell them this is a big game coming up, or is everyone aware of it, or what's that kind of like for you guys?
Again, I think you've only got to look at sort of a Jimmy Abdou, who came from obviously Plymouth, being French. He learnt the Millwall way pretty quickly. You know, I think when you're at the club, you learn the way and you start to know who the rivals are and the big games coming up where you're going to have 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 fans backing you.
I mean, what was it? Obviously, when we played West Ham, we lost against West Ham. But I mean, that night was pure venom. I mean, how is that playing in those situations for you as players?
You could sense that before you went out on. Look, you can sense it. The build up to it is massive, but you can sense it in the tunnel before you go out, and the ref says if you score, don't celebrate. So you knew how volatile them, that, like you said, vicious the word. Even when you were coming into the grounds of West Ham that night, and I think was it that night we was getting pelters, and it was. I mean, you're driving through.
Yeah, they were all in Green Street, weren't they? All round the market,
Green Street,
and everywhere.
And the hatred and the build up to it's brilliant. But it is like you can see that and the energy in the crowd and the whole rivalry between the two, especially West Ham and likes of Leeds. But yeah, that night was a night we all never played in something like that, where I think they scored late on. We scored early on with Neil Harris, I think, and they scored late on. And
I think they equalised after the trouble, didn't they? They pitch invaded, and then they equalised not long after that, didn't they? It probably took us out our rhythm a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, about 3 minutes to go, wasn't it?
Yeah, 83. Yeah, 83.
Zavron Hines equalised late on, didn't he? It was a little cold.
Zavron Hines, yeah.
Yeah.
Hines,
do you remember on that night, as we were going past that they basically protected the Bobby Moore statue, and it was Jack, the bus driver, was talking about the windows. He said, "Yeah, the windows are brick proof, but they're not bulletproof." And I thought, hang on, don't test this. But you know, I saw that. Funny enough, that game showed me, you know, just the intensity of all that, you know, because what I did, I got off the bus and walked down the, you know, when you guys were in the dressing room, I actually went down into Green Street and saw it all begin to kick off. And I actually watched the first half in the away section, and it was carnage. And that was the first time I really understood how visceral that whole rivalry was. But equally, to turn that on its head, you mentioned Charlton earlier on. That 4-0 against Charlton was the first time I've seen players terrified at the Den, where I can remember seeing Phil Parkinson earlier that week. It was a game at Carlisle on the Tuesday night, and he was up there doing a scouting mission, and he looked like death warmed up. He was grey, he was knackered, he was going to have to get back into his car. He drove back to the training ground, slept in his car, got there at 4 o'clock in the morning, whatever it was. And I can remember him shepherding his team out of that little dressing room, the away dressing room. And he called each of his players by their Christian name, good luck, Fred, or whatever. And he was trying to be too casual. And you looked at the eyes of some of those players, and you guys must have seen it when because you're so close to the opponents. You've got 40 at the back giving it some about they're ours and all that sort of stuff in that big basso profundo voice. And I just saw them there, and I just thought, this game's over. And that was literally before we left the tunnel. And that, on the other hand, is the positive side of Millwall fans. They are a force of nature when you've got them on your side.
As a journalist going into this, did you already have a preconceived image of Millwall? And then obviously a few games in when we got when we played West Ham, was it obviously with the cup, we got it in the cup. Were you already thinking that this is going to be a moody environment, or were you thinking that a lot of it's just myth?
To be honest, I wanted to find out is part of it. I think the thing about Millwall stories is that they're too easy to write. Bad journalists find it very easy to write, lazy stories. Basically, I'm not saying there are certain elements that you look at and it makes you cringe, to be honest. But in terms of a fan base and what they represent, they are close to their community. I think the team, that team, your team, guys, was so close to the community, and it's still remembered, as that, we're 10 years on now, but that team's still remembered, and it's remembered really fondly. And, it's interesting also that the culture of the club, I think, produces good managers and coaches. Because if you think about it, Sean Dyche had his time there. And if you think about Sean's great mantra, I've done quite a lot of work with Sean recently up at Burnley. And his mantra is, maximum effort is the minimum expectation. And that's straight out of the Millwall playbook, isn't it? And when you think of how many of you guys, you've all three of you have moved on. Framo would have been a very good coach, but he's gone back into the family business. There's something about playing for Millwall which demands a certain type of character. And, to your point, Gaz, that's why so many players come back to the club, because they feel a sense of belonging with it,